Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar, Food Safety Leadership in Times of Crisis. My name's Amy Wayne. I'm a part of the marketing team here at PJRFSI. We're excited to be hosting some guests from BRCGS for today's webinar, and I'm going to be introducing them to you later in the presentation. First, we've got a little bit of housekeeping to cover before we can actually get started on the good stuff. All attendees on the call are on mute just to make sure the call clarity remains intact, but we do absolutely want to take your questions. So go ahead and please use the questions tab, which is near the bottom of the control panel, as indicated here, to type your questions in, and we will answer them at the end of the prepared slides. The number one question we get is, will this webinar be recorded or will the slides be available? And it's a yes to both. We do record all of our webinars and post them on our YouTube channel. So you can find our YouTube channel if you go to pjrfsi.com and click the YouTube icon at the top of the page. You can subscribe and then you'll get all of our updates, all of our videos and recordings. The slides will also be available for download from pjrfsi.com under the Training and Webinars tab. So, just to get us started, we do have a first polling question for you all to participate in, just to get a feel for who's here. So that first polling question is your organization currently certified to a GFSI standard? And your options are, yes, we're certified with PJRFSI. Yes, we're certified with another certification body. No, we're not certified yet, but we're looking to become certified, or you're not interested in becoming certified. So we'll give you guys a little bit of time here to quickly answer. We really do want to just get a feel for who all is on this call. And afterwards, it helps us know, like, okay, who are we reaching? We want to know who's out there. And just another side note for housekeeping's sake, there have been some issues with GoToWebinar in the past hour or so is being reported. So if you are suddenly booted from the call, please do try to rejoin with the link that was sent to you, and we will hopefully not have to deal with any of that. Okay, so we've got about 70% reporting, so let's close the poll and we're going to share. And it looks like it's so great to see there are so many of you that are certified, and we're so glad to see that. We love being able to help with relevant information for certified individuals. But for those of you who are not certified, maybe this will help you learn more about what certifications you may be interested in. So with that taken care of, I am going to go ahead and introduce our first presenter. That would be Paul Demarin. He's the Senior Vice President of Food Safety and Supply Chain here at PJRFSI. Paul joined us only a couple months ago, actually, in January of this year, but he has over 35 years of experience in the hospitality, service, and retail agri-food sectors. Before he came to PJRFSI, Paul worked for 15 years in the certification industry with clients in every sector, from food safety and supply chain to brand protection and quality. Paul has worked for many years in the management system certifications as well, and before that, Paul was a professional chef and a consultant for over 20 years, working in major hotel chains, restaurants, private golf courses, and food service organizations. So let me just hand it right over to Paul and he can take it away.
Thank you very much, Amy. That was quite an introduction. Thank you so much. I think I'm moving the slides here. So the first thing I just want to say is thanks again to everybody for joining our call today. We really appreciate it, and I just want you to know how much it means to us that you've joined. So, you know, with that, and before we formally begin, I just want to say, and I think this comes as no surprise, but really during this game-changing and terrible pandemic that we're all in and we're all facing, here at our company, we're fully committed to, you know, obviously the health and well-being of our staff, our customers, and even our communities at this time. We've really seen a large effect of COVID-19, not only in Canada and the US, but certainly across the world. And, you know, at the same time, though, we've actually seen the best in each other, and that's between, again, our clients, our staff, and our colleagues. We see it every day in doctors and nurses, the first responders that are out there on the front lines, helping everyone who's directly affected by the situation. On behalf of PJRFSI, you know, we certainly want to applaud all of you for doing your part to get us through this unprecedented time. As Amy mentioned, my name's Paul. I represent Perry Johnson Food Safety Registrars, Inc., or PJRFSI, but for today's purpose, I'll just refer to us as FSI. I'm going to give a very, very high-level overview of our family of companies. This will then be followed by Lauren Maloney, who's our Global Accreditation Manager. And Lauren's going to touch on a few of the challenges that we as a certification body are facing with respect to our services and how we're managing the pandemic on our end to the benefit of our clients. I also have the pleasure of welcoming John Kukoli and Jessica Burke, who I've known for many, many years from BRCGS. They're going to be speaking more in depth about their standards, COVID-19, how they as a scheme owner are managing the challenges today, and how to be a leader during this crisis. So jumping right in, I just want to let you know, Perry Johnson Registrars, or PJR, was originally founded back in '94 by Perry L. Johnson, the owner of our company, and really has been at the forefront of international certification in the registration industry from the very beginning. After we achieved our initial ANAB accreditation shortly after PJR's creation in '95, our first venture into international business was in 1999, and that was with the expansion into our Japanese and Brazilian markets. PGLA, our laboratory accreditation business, it was also founded in '99, and then in early 2000s, we saw further growth overseas with opening up global locations in places like Germany, Portugal, Spain, Italy, Latin America, Canada, Thailand, just to name a few. During that time, we also attained our UCAS accreditation. In more recent years, we continued to broaden our international horizons with offices in the UK and China. In 2005, Perry Johnson and Associates was founded, and they are a healthcare technology company that specializes in transcription, medical coding, telemedicine, and virtual scribing services. And then shortly after that is where PJRFSI was born, as a result of the demand in industry for third-party certification. We're headquartered in Troy, Michigan, and we're truly a global company. We're part of a family of companies, in fact, that supports registration, testing, and certification. And as I mentioned, we have global offices around the world offering a wide range of certification, such as HACCP to GFSI, organic, gluten-free, cannabis, hemp, and even FDA audits. So in the last 8 years or so, FSI has really supported and worked with companies in virtually every sector in the industry. We work with companies in production, processing, distribution, consumption, even disposal. And we work with many retailers, processors, farms, imports and exporters, distribution companies to really help them manage their food safety, supply chain, quality, and brand protection. We're really committed over here at FSI to providing value-added food safety certification for our clients in their supply chain. We're also currently recognized as the #1 registrar in the Americas by the IAAR. We, truly believe, and this goes back to a lot of my chef days as well, but there's a real difference out there between customer service and customer focus. By focusing on our customers and anticipating what their needs are going to be and supporting them in that journey, it ensures that we're dedicated to uphold, high standards of professionalism, technical competence, et cetera. And as Perry Johnson himself did over 30 years ago, we apply these principles of quality management, organizational excellence in all of our office and field activities, and we comply with the requirements that are set forth by international standards organizations, accreditation bodies, scheme owners like BRC, who's here today, and other concerned parties. We have over 460 auditors in about 60 countries who understand not only the regulations of those countries, but also the language and equally important, the culture of these countries. I can also tell you, and I'm happy to report that in the last 5 years, we've received a rating from our clients of about 9.5 out of 10, which is great. So this slide, importantly here, points out that the certification industry has been deemed an essential service. But why? Well, if you think about it, food safety certification is based on the results of tests, inspections, and audits. It gives confidence to you and me as a consumer because the organization's products or their system has been thoroughly evaluated against international or national industry standards by a competent third party. But this doesn't mean that it's business as usual today, far from it actually. There are several required changes to how our business will run and your business during this time. We have to ensure we continue to provide high quality service for you while maintaining safety and doing our part as a company to reduce the impact of COVID-19. So, at Perry Johnson Registrars and our family companies, we're not taking this situation lightly. We're using every recommended precaution in our business today. And our ultimate end goal is to eliminate direct physical interaction that could promote the transmission of the virus. We actively promote social distancing, like I know all of you are, and follow recommendations by various health authorities around hand washing and sanitation. And in today's market, this is extremely critical. The landscape of our industry is constantly changing. It's dynamic. Trends are shifting every single day. Expectations are changing of your customers, your suppliers, the industry. Everything from recall to regulation, navigating that landscape today can be a real challenge for all of us. It doesn't matter what size or scope of business you are. So the way that we define our services is really into 4 key areas: auditing and certification to accredited third-party programs, second-party auditing, which are the unaccredited schemes that we own and develop, like GMP, GDP, etc. We have customer-specific auditing, so this would be an audit checklist that you as a customer would give to us, and we would conduct on your behalf. And then, of course, training. So just quickly trying to move through here now. Looking at the FSI side of our house, we have about 30 programs today that we support and audit or inspect to, and many types of audits in the industry: accredited, unaccredited, client-specific. Some are government regulated, some are retailer mandated. We work with almost every sector, as I mentioned, and really we have our offerings into 5 main channels. The first party, like I said, would be a customer-specific checklist. Generally, companies would use us or other CBs because of the technical knowledge, location of our auditors, language requirements, minimizing cost to your business. These are all typical reasons. They're generally 1 to 2 day audits, and sometimes your first-party audits can actually be seen as an extension of your internal audit program, where in this case the CB would be representing you and your global supply chain. Second party are the unaccredited schemes, and third party, obviously, GFSI standards, ISO. These are ones where the standards that we audit to are accredited under the governing guidance, which is ISO 17065 or 17021. And finally, we're recognized as an accredited body to perform various government audits and inspections, such as FSMA, FSVP for Foreign Supplier Verification Program, as well as the Voluntary Qualified Importer Program, or VQIP. Now, if we look over at the core side of our business, or the management systems, this is really a small sample of the incredible depth of management system standards that we work with. We conduct audits across all sectors and schemes, being quality, environmental, aerospace, automotive, and many more. And if you think about it, food safety management system certification, although it's only 8 or 10 years old in some cases, it's still really in its infancy compared to many of the well-known standards here that really kind of set the standard for all of the food programs. And many years ago, we saw a dramatic shift from individual system audits to combined audits and then integrated audits on this side of the house, where a company would have one integrated management system, or IMS, and that would cover off multiple areas of the business. So they didn't have multiple policies, multiple, work instructions or management systems. They would have one, like an integrated QH&S program. And you don't see that so much on the food side of the house, but over the last couple of years, we've seen a lot of combined audits. We've seen a lot of bolt-on audits, but from a truly integrated perspective, we're not quite there yet, but I do believe that we will get there. So we have longstanding relationship with many of the accreditation bodies and scheme owners like BRCGS that you see here. Accreditation gives our customers assurance that we operate under the rules of the accreditation bodies and scheme owners, and that helps to regulate us to maintain our highest quality of work. We partner, as we are doing today, with many of these organizations to ensure that we're delivering the most up-to-date information that we can pass along to our customers, as what we're doing today and all month, actually. So typically, where a certification body comes and audits you, the accreditation or scheme owners come and audit us. It's really a large investment that's made every year by our family of companies, but it's really well worth it because it gives our customers, confidence around the world that they've partnered with a recognized CB. And then just finally here for me, I just want to be sure today I give more time for my co-presenters. So to wrap up my portion, sorry, I'm just moving this slide here. Here we go. At a high level, we have 30 years of auditing experience. We're recognized by the IAAR as the #1. We truly would bring a significant value of service to your business that would give you greater transparency, even cost effectiveness, improved risk. We publish content daily here for information that you can use to protect your company. And we work very closely with our clients to keep them updated on everything that's happening in the industry. So, you know, as everyone knows, this is a time of great change. It was just a few short months ago that this all started, and we're only really at the beginning, everyone. So, you know, we all need to start building our plans for recovery post-COVID-19. That includes a pivot to our business models, really, our operations, our supplier policies, maybe even offboarding strategies, various technologies, and remobilizing your workforce. This is a time of monumental change in the industry, and now I believe is the time for all of us to execute and lay out those plans to give not only our customers or our suppliers, but also our stakeholders and employees confidence that we're in control. So thank you very much for listening, and I'm going to pass it off to Amy.
Thank you so much, Paul. It's that time again, everybody. So let me go ahead and launch our second polling question. And that second question would be, is your organization familiar with GFSI's position on remote or virtual audits? Your options are yes, no, or you're in need of more information. And as those answers are coming in, I did want to let everybody know that we do have, as Paul will cover later in this webinar, a schedule of several other upcoming webinars. So I do want to ask you all to go to our website at PJRFSI.com and check those out. You can sign up for as many or as few of them as you'd like. So we've got about 60% reporting on the poll, and we want to hurry right along so we can get to Lauren. So I'm going to go ahead and close and share. It looks like it's a good mix. It's about 50-50 really between people who know or people who are either totally unaware or want more clarification. So what a better place to be than in a webinar about that. All right. So now it is my pleasure to introduce our Food Safety and Supply Chain Accreditation Manager for PJRFSI, Lauren Maloney. Lauren has over 10 years of experience in the field of sustainable agriculture and food production. She brings her knowledge to the food safety program, managing our SQF, BRC, Global Gap, IFS, gluten-free, HACCP/GMP program requirements, and all of the accreditations associated with that. She's also our in-house trainer for Global Gap, and she's an inspector for fruit and vegetable scopes. In addition to agriculture and food production, she holds her MS in conservation biology. She has such a diverse background and knowledge base, and really is such a benefit to the food safety program. So, Lauren, I'm going to hand it right over to you and take it away.
Thank you so much, Amy, for the great introduction. So today I will be talking about PJRFSI on our stance on COVID-19, and as well as explain a little bit about the GFSI policy as well. So that poll, you know, was really pertinent because I know that there's a lot of confusion around the policies for all the scheme owners per GFSI, so I'll be able to tell you a little bit about that. First of all, I want to say that PJRFSI is taking the necessary steps to mitigate the risks of auditing during the pandemic. Our priority is to keep our client certificates current by either performing cautious on-site audits or the use of virtual technology when permitted. Many of our clients have contacted us indicating a variety of situations that may impact their ability to host a successful audit. Perhaps that their operations are reduced or completely shut down and production has ceased. They have a no visitor policy in place to not allow anyone into the facility that is not an employee. Or there's restrictions on how the locations can be assessed because of shelter-in-place orders. Furthermore, we may not have a local auditor to perform audits, and a qualified auditor may not be able to travel by plane or other means to get to our clients. So for the GFSI stance on temporary audit measures during COVID-19 pandemic is that GFSI is only allowing the certificate to be extended for GFSI benchmark schemes like BRC, food and packaging. They're allowing a one-time extension for up to 6 months, and this is only after PJRFSI performs a risk assessment which would include the review of past audit reports, updated emergency action plans or COVID-19 policies, internal audits, relevant food safety plans, HACCP plans, and procedures. And this will also include a discussion, a pretty lengthy discussion with the site and relevant personnel about these programs to see if the certificate can be extended. If the determination that there's low risk to the extension of the certificate, then PJRFSI will reissue the cert and plan on conducting an on-site audit during the extension window. We are still conducting on-site audits. If an auditor is going to audit on-site, then we're requiring them to perform the basics, like staying home if they are sick, sanitizing everything, including laptop and mobile devices, hands after use, making sure that we're doing everything in our power to ensure that the policies and procedures we have put in place protect our clients. We have also required that if an auditor is self-monitoring for COVID-19 symptoms daily, and they will self-isolate if they believe they have come into contact with anyone that may have been affected or presumed to have COVID-19. We are following all the recommendations and procedures outlined by groups like CDC and FDA and our own policies. However, this still may not prevent the virus from reaching us or our families, so you have our commitment that we're doing everything in our power to keep you safe and protect your brand. So because GFSI does not allow the use of a virtual audit in place of a on-site audit, the only offer we can offer BRC clients is a virtual pre-assessment. And for conducting a remote audit or virtual pre, we would use adequate connectivity to voice and video, such as GoToMeeting or Zoom, and ensure the communication between you and the auditor is stable. Once the communication is up and running, audit evidence will be collected via documentation review, records review, interviewing. Depending on your company's connectivity, we may use screen sharing and/or video sharing to observe processes and activities. All evidence will then be reviewed and put into the report. The only difference is that it's using remote techniques. We are monitoring currently the GFSI stance, and if this is updated at all and remote audits or remote activities are allowed, then we will be able to perform them with ease. All right, and now I'm going to hand it back to Amy for polling question number 3.
All right, thanks, Lauren. That third polling question should now be up on your screen. The question is, what do you need most from us at this time to support your business? We can give you information on resources to respond to crises in food production, more information about certification options to keep market access protected, support continuing certification through travel restrictions and other delays, or all of the above. There is no wrong answer, so whatever you feel most strongly aligns with your interests, go ahead and select that now. We'll give you about 10 more seconds to respond. All right, we've got just over half responding, so I'm going to go ahead and close that polling question. And here's how you all responded. So it looks like everybody's pretty interested in everything, and that's understandable. In a time like this, you really want to have as much information as possible, just to know where you stand. It's really unprecedented what's going on in the world today, so totally understandable. Okay, with that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce the main body of our webinar today, which is, I'm sure, why you decided to attend, because who doesn't want to hear the experts talk about BRC? So BRCGS was founded in the 90s by retailers who wanted to harmonize food safety standards across the supply chain. And to this day, BRCGS is globally recognized across both food and non-food categories, and they operate some of the most rigorous third-party certification schemes of their type. Now, joining us today from BRCGS are John Kokoli and Jessica Burke. John has successfully led the BRCGS efforts in the Americas for over 11 years. Before he came to BRCGS, John managed the food industry with an accredited certification body and spent many years working in the food and services industry, developing his wide knowledge and experience. His roles have covered leadership, sales, engineering, operations, and quality management, primarily in and around the food production industry. Now, Jessica has over 18 years of experience. She began her career in an environmental and food testing laboratory. After that, she held various roles in quality assurance and food safety in the food manufacturing industry, where she helped multiple companies strengthen their food safety systems and achieve GFSI certification. In her current role at BRCGS, Jessica has overall responsibility for the Americas technical team and is the technical specialist for the gluten-free certification program and plant-based global standard. So I'm going to go ahead and give the reins over to John. And John, if you'd like to go ahead and take it away, it's all you.
And thank you very much. Amy, I appreciate that. Lauren, Paul, thank you for the great introduction. I'm not going to take a lot of your time. I'm going to move on to give Jessica a fair bit of time to explain some of the specific details within the standard. But before we begin, I want to take 4 or 5 moments to recognize you folks. We at BRCGS, like the team at Perry Johnson, want to really express our thanks and respect for all of the people working in the food industry today, going to work, doing the job that you do in order to support and protect the nation's food supply in a challenging time like this is exceptional. Plain and simple, thank you. Your dedication, your expertise, greatly needed and always appreciated, so be safe. And let's go with this. So who are we? BRCGS, we are the biggest, we're the most rigorous, sometimes good, sometimes bad, and most respected of the GFSI benchmark programs. We cover food safety, quality, and regulatory compliance all in our food standard. We have a number of auxiliary standards that support that are GFSI recognized as well, packaging, logistics, agents and brokers, as well as a few additional ones, including retail and some specialty claim verification programs, things like gluten-free verification and plant-based certification. So those are what we do, what we bring to the industry. Part of that what is we own and we manage these standards, but you have to remember, we don't write them. They're designed, they're built, they're written by industry experts. We bring technical working groups together to assemble these standards. Our job as BRCGS is really to manage them and to ensure they're consistently applied throughout the world using our compliance program. I mean, our compliance program is exceptionally well known. It is the reference point for many other organizations on how to manage certification programs, and it is in a class by itself. We're also here to provide essential information, systems, and opportunities for individuals to grow and improve their capabilities. Things like our Participate platform, our knowledge bank, our professional designation program, and e-learning, other things like that to support you, the industry, in doing what you do. How do we do it? Part of what we do is we provide the best guidance to deliver the products in challenging times. Right now, we're facing shortages of materials, staff, service providers. We're looking at new and rebuilding supply chains, new working conditions, and rapidly changing demand and market dynamics. We're here, what we want to do today really and ongoing is to help you prepare to protect your customers, our consumers, brands, and our staff as we quickly move towards what's going to be very much a new normal, as Paul said, in the food industry. So with that, Jessica is going to cover a few different things for us. The details of the BRCGS position on certification extensions, re-audits, as well as some specific information on options we're working on at the moment to help with your operational needs. Obviously, we've had hundreds of questions coming in that we never anticipated needing answers for, and our technical team has been tasked with putting together a detailed FAQs document, as well as additional guidance documents and additional resources all assembled. We've got a new section on our website. As we're rebuilding our website, one of the things we do have right now front and center is our COVID response and information session covering our perspective, our guidance, as well as some of the best industry practice links that we can find, and we're updating that on a weekly basis. So towards the end of the session, a little bit about BRCGS resources that are available there, the technical cultural development articles and external links we put on there, we're going to cover off. Don't forget, as we go through, you have questions, type them in. We're going to spend all the time we need to answer your questions towards the end of this. And I am now going to hand it all over to our technical manager, Jessica Burke, to cover off the specific details. Jessica.
Thank you, John, and good afternoon, everyone. Oh, looks like I went one too many slides. So I'd like to start today by talking a little bit about how BRCGS audits are being affected by COVID-19 right now. As Lauren mentioned, there are a lot of factors at play when it comes to certification during this time because of the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. Not only will government travel restrictions have an impact on audit arrangements, but sites may also have company policies to prevent visitors to the site in order to safeguard the health of their employees. Certifications are also restricting auditor travel to particular countries or regions to safeguard the health of their auditors. And for these reasons, this is why we put together some procedures in place for existing certified sites who are not able to receive a physical audit. So where a site is operational, but a physical audit can't occur in time and will potentially result in the certificate expiring, an extension of up to 6 months can be issued based on completion of a risk assessment by the certification body. And again, as Lauren mentioned earlier about the GFSI position, this is in line with the GFSI position for extensions. So through discussions with the site, the certification body will gather information to support the risk assessment. They'll be looking for things like the history of third-party certification, the history and maturity of the BRCGS system, and we'll consider any other management systems or certifications that the site might have in place. They'll also consider any critical situations throughout the organization's certification history and pending compliance activities or legal proceedings and any product recalls since the last BRCGS audit. In addition, they'll review whether the site is functioning normally, whether significant changes have been made at the site since the last BRCGS audit, and whether the site is operating to the scope of certification. They'll review any changes to the processes or services outsourced following the COVID-19 emergency, and of course the appropriateness of the site's emergency response plan to COVID-19. Obviously, the aim of the discussion primarily is to assess the site's actions in response to COVID-19 and ensure that they have developed their procedures so that they can continue to supply safe products. So assuming the certification body is satisfied with everything that they have assessed, a certificate extension of up to 6 months can be issued. Once the site becomes accessible, the full on-site audit will take place as normal, and a new certificate will be issued for an additional 12 months. I will clarify that certificates can only be extended to the current scope, so no significant changes to the scope can be made at this time. And unfortunately, sites that currently have a C or a D grade are considered high risk, and they won't be able to have their certificate extended. So on to the big question, what to consider when managing food safety during this COVID-19 pandemic. As always, it starts at the top. It's increasingly important that sites have a strong leadership team dedicated specifically to managing COVID-19 processes. And given the speed at which circumstances are changing, the team should meet regularly, if not daily, at least at first, to review and update the COVID-19 processes. The team should be considering things like government advice, staff sickness, and resource requirements. Something else to keep in mind is the likelihood of higher levels of absenteeism due to illness or self-isolation, which will occur in the management team just as much as in any other group of employees. So for this reason, it's really important to ensure that information is shared that there are clear designates assigned who are kept up to date with actions, and that new policies are documented so that these can quickly and easily be picked up by others in response to absences. So I think we think a lot about the fact that on the floor employees are going to be ill, but we also have to make sure that we're covering off our management illnesses and absenteeism as well, and ensure that our communication is really great during this time. And of course, speaking of employees, I can't stress enough the importance of communicating with staff. Employees need to be made aware of any emerging issues and the resulting changes to procedures. I think now more than ever, they'll be looking at their leadership team for direction during this time. So inevitably, there will be shortages of raw materials as production shuts down in certain regions and the supply chain becomes disrupted due to absenteeism and potential border closures. This may lead to the need for alternative raw material suppliers to ensure that production can continue. Of course, this brings increased risks, and it's really important that these risks are understood and managed. Supply issues can't always be predicted. However, by understanding the supply chain and conducting regular reviews with suppliers of their stock situation, as well as understanding the situation in the country of origin and watching for commodity prices, we can help reduce risk and allow for future planning. Since in many cases audits can't be undertaken, sites may need to look at different ways of approving new raw material suppliers. So this might mean looking at existing certifications, reviewing audit reports, or potentially performing remote desktop reviews. It's also essential to have information about the alternative raw material before accepting it and to perform a full review of the consequences of the use of the raw material. This should include a review of product specifications, for example, to look at any component ingredients, any allergens, significant variants from the current raw material, and of course the nature of the raw material. So is it frozen, is it chilled, etc. And is that different from the current raw material? In addition, the potential for fraud or substitution needs to be considered. And for each new raw material to be used, a list of finished products that the raw material will go into should be compiled and reviewed with particular emphasis on any packaging claims being made and ingredient declarations that might be affected by use of this new raw material. Raw material inspection and testing procedures should also be reviewed, and it may be necessary to introduce additional checks until confidence is established in the new raw material. So some things you might want to take into consideration are the need for positive release of initial deliveries, enhanced testing and inspection, and possibly requesting certificates of analysis for each delivery. And let's not forget about the importance of communicating any changes to customers and brand owners and updating any finished product specifications where necessary. So unfortunately, shortages of materials are often accompanied by price increases, which can increase the risk of substitution or fraudulent adulteration. Since buyers are usually most familiar with changes to the market and price increases in raw materials, it's really important for technical and procurement teams to share information on changing circumstances, as well as assess the potential risks from fraud. By monitoring raw material shortages and price changes, it'll be much easier to identify raw materials at greatest risk from fraud. Businesses should also review the raw material risk ratings and contingency plans that they currently have in place, as they may need to implement increased testing or inspection for raw materials which have been identified to be at higher risk. So another area of concern is preventative maintenance programs. Maintenance service providers may not be able to access the site. Therefore, plans should be reviewed to look at minimum maintenance levels to run the plant without unacceptable increased risk of breakdown. So items which are of known risk of failure and consequent contamination risk should be identified and regularly inspected where planned maintenance programs have been reduced. So this might include things like mixing paddles, rubber gaskets, sieves, etc. If engineering contractors are used, they need to be closely controlled and managed in accordance with the site's COVID-19 visitor policy. Housekeeping and hygiene. So cleaning priorities should be reviewed to include the identification of hard surfaces with the potential for transfer of the coronavirus. So for example, things like door handles and utensils, tables, that kind of thing. Sites may also need to increase environmental monitoring and line changeover or startup inspections to manage the output of changed cleaning processes. There may also be situations where regular cleaning chemicals are not available and alternate cleaning chemicals might need to be used. So in this case, it's really important to ensure that any changes to handling, dilution rates, or usage are safe and effective. Sorry. Obviously, visits from pest control technicians may be reduced, similar to maintenance contractors. And any changes to access for pest controllers for routine visits should be based on risk and consider the site's pest management history, products handled, and inherent risk of pest infestation and seasonal factors. If pest control activity is reduced, as a safeguarding measure, additional in-house surveillance and inspections should be introduced to compensate for the less frequent pest control technician visits. And since sites may be employing high levels of temporary staff due to higher absenteeism, food defense plans should be reviewed with particular emphasis on managing increased vulnerability. It is likely that sites will need to take on more temporary workers to cover for absenteeism or additional shifts due to demand or slower line speeds. This may increase the risk of individuals or groups wanting to disrupt the supply chain or breach site policies. So it's really important that existing approved food defense measures are maintained during this period and consideration is given to avoid any breaches. So for example, the use of increased signage might help new employees understand what the rules and expectations are. The internal audit program should be reviewed to ensure the focus is on processes most at risk as a result of changes introduced in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. So as an example, might be necessary to do more frequent GMP inspections, etc. Specific training requirements should be designed and implemented for temporary employees. This should include things like requirements for personal hygiene, health and safety, safeguarding of employees, and sickness reporting procedures. There should also be an increased emphasis on critical control points. So for example, backup employees should be identified and trained to manage CCPs just in case any CCP operators are ill or absent. There should also be clear identification of critical control points within the processing environment for the benefit of the new employees. Obviously, employee protection is crucial during this time, and to manage this, sites should have a clear policy for acceptance of visitors to the site. This should include general visitors, as well as subcontractors like pest control, service engineers, contract cleaners, and vehicle drivers. Where visitors are allowed on site, procedures should be in place to make them aware of the site rules for the management of COVID-19 and to ensure they're not exhibiting the symptoms of COVID-19 and don't present a risk to the staff before acceptance on site. And in addition, they should be provided with any protective clothing required to access the site as necessary. The site should also ensure that operations are managed to reduce the risk of employees from cross contact. So this might include things like transport to the site where company contracted vehicles are used, management of communal areas, including change rooms, restrooms, shift start and changeovers, working arrangements within the production facility, and employee movement, and the use of screens to separate workers on lines where social distancing can't be achieved. If a risk assessment has identified the need for the use of personal protective equipment to reduce the spread of coronavirus, this should be provided for all employees and visitors where permitted. And lastly, the site should have a procedure in place to ensure employees are assessed for signs of coronavirus infection before starting to work. And this might include things like temperature checks or fit to work declarations. So obviously this was a very brief overview of what you should be considering during this time. However, as John mentioned earlier, we do have an entire COVID-19 resource page on our website where you can get additional detailed information on all of these topics and more. And I'll also mention that we will be updating the site regularly as new information becomes available. So make sure to check back often. We're constantly getting questions in regards to this situation, and so we are regularly updating our FAQs related to both sites and certification bodies. So as I said, keep checking back often. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jessica. So with that, I do want to remind everybody that you can go ahead and type your questions into the questions tab on that control panel on your screen, and we're going to get to the answers very shortly. But first, we have one final polling question for you, and that has to do with your company's priorities after the business starts, or I'm sorry, the market starts returning to normal business practices. Are you going to be looking more at focusing on audits, making sure you're up to date and on track with all of that? Will you be conducting new training, adding new product safety modules, or maybe you have something else in mind? So as your poll is filling in, I do want to remind everybody, since I'm already seeing a few questions come in about it, if you were late to the beginning of the webinar, we will be offering the slides for the presentation for download from PJRFSI.com, and a full recording of the entire session, including the Q&A that's to come, will be available from our YouTube channel. So it looks like we've got over half responding, so I'm going to go ahead and close this poll so we can get along with our Q&A in a bit. And it looks like a lot of people are most interested in audits and training. Now, I did set this poll to allow multiple responses, so if you had to choose multiple, that's great. I know there's going to be a lot to consider whenever we do end up going more back towards normal, even though I'm sure that normal, like everyone has been saying in this presentation, will be not quite the same as what it once was. So with that, I'm going to quickly and briefly hand it back over to Paul so he can tell you a little bit more about our other upcoming webinars.
Yeah, that's great, Amy. Thank you. And just quickly, I want to say a very big thank you to John and Jessica, as well as Lauren, for spending your time and giving us your expertise. It was very useful and much appreciated. This is just a quick overview of some of the coming webinars we have in the next few weeks. We're really looking to provide you with a good overview of what's important, what's pertinent, and what's happening in the industry. We want you to look to us for the future for any additional webinar needs that you might have. And one coming up next week is with SQF, and we're talking about the launch of their social responsibility standard. The week after that, it's more on the basics of food safety certification and leadership commitment as it relates to GFSI. And there's another one coming up that we're all extremely excited about. We're actually expecting a couple of thousand people on this one, so I would recommend that you reserve that soon. It's how to create a healthy lifestyle and boost your immune system during not only COVID, but any pandemic. We have a special guest, Dr. Lee. He is the president and medical director. He's a medical doctor as well, and a New York Times bestseller, author. So I won't go through what he's going to talk about, but there's some very interesting and exciting topics that I think is not only relevant for food companies, but for everybody. So I hope to see you all in the coming webinars, and back over to you, Amy. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much. So we do have a lot of questions coming in, so let's get right to it. Let me quickly go up to the first one. And if I mispronounce any names, I do apologize. But first question comes from Deepak Rana. Deepak asks, are you certified with BRC standards? And I think what this is asking is which BRC standards are we able to certify to from PJRFSI?
Most of them, but why don't you go ahead, Lauren?
Yep, so we currently are accredited to BRC food, BRC packaging, and gluten-free. We also have the ability to perform other BRC audits like storage and distribution and agents and brokers, and we can clients can contact us for more information.
Okay, great. We have a question here from Cindy Luna, and her question regards what will happen with seasonal operations, for example, Alaskan seafood industry, which is only operated 3 months during the summer due to travel restrictions and quarantine requirements, which are state mandated. What will happen with those operations?
I think that's a good question for John or Jessica.
Yeah, so we do.
There you go, Jessica.
Sorry, I was just going to say it is a question that we've had. We don't have a clear answer on that yet. We do recognize that there will be issues to work through that have been caused by the processes that we've put in place. So we are working on addressing this. We will update you soon, but I don't think we have anything further than that, John, unless potentially you have some additional information on that.
No, it is something. I mean, with many organizations like this, we're in a bit of a challenge. We're bound by accreditation rules. We're bound by GFSI rules. So at this point, GFSI has said no remote auditing is permissible. But in a case like this, you know, there's no point in coming in late September and saying, okay, now restrictions have been lifted by the government. We can get in there and do it if production is done. So do be in touch both with the certification body and with us. We expect, Jessica's, I know, working on some remote options that hopefully we can present to you within the next couple of weeks. So hang tight.
Great answers. Question from Faris Nuri for Jessica. For those manufacturers that do not qualify to obtain extension at this time, what other methods are being offered for manufacturers to show that they're improving or can improve to qualify for the extension?
So I assume I might just get you to repeat the question, but I assume you're talking about a site which has like a C or a D grade and they can't get an extension?
Yeah, the question is simply saying those that do not qualify, what methods can be used to show improvement in order to qualify? And yes, Ferris has offered clarification that is the correct assumption.
Yeah, unfortunately, the certificate will expire just because a C or a D site is a higher risk site, so we can't offer certificate extensions. One thing I will mention though is that they won't get a major nonconformance when they do finally get an audit, because obviously we know that there are going to be challenges with this and that there will be certificates that expire because of situations like this. So, you know, if that helps.
Hopefully that helps clarify, yes. We have a question from Thomas De Paula. What if you have not encountered issues with suppliers? Your suppliers and servicers have assured you they will be remaining open. Will a risk assessment stating this be sufficient from an auditor perspective?
I'm not quite sure I understand the question.
Let me see if I can word it slightly differently. If you've not, I think he's asking if you've not encountered issues with suppliers or servicers and they will remain open, would a risk assessment statement to that effect be sufficient to establish?
Yeah, I mean, it's all about if a site is okay with having a service provider come on site and the service provider is still willing to do so, then that's totally fine. We're looking more at, you know, what should you do if you can't get your service providers to come on site. So I think in a situation where they're still able to get the service that they can get, I think that's great.
Excellent. A question now from, I'm sorry, I already know I'm going to mispronounce this name, Caroline Leclerc. When internal audits are made by the corporate office and not the facility auditing their own work, how can we maintain the internal audit calendar by also doing the plant tour and key employee interviews?
So the internal audits are normally done by corporate. So I mean, I would say I think we need to be creative, you know, so if that means that now we have to assign people who are in the plant and, you know, perhaps their management within the plant or in different departments than usual, in order to maintain that schedule, I think that that's what we need to do. So it might require some extra training, and you know, some different people than you would normally use, but ultimately it's really important now, even more so, that we're maintaining those schedules and at least looking at the internal audits and risk assessing, you know, which areas do we really need to make sure that we're still covering, and which ones can we maybe back off on a little bit, so that we ensure that we're covering the ones that make the most sense right now.
Excellent. Robert Berube asks, we are changing certification bodies and are scheduled with a new one. Can the new certification body do the risk assessment for extension, or do we have to go back to our old CB?
So unfortunately, well, I shouldn't say unfortunately, but you do have to go back to your old CB. So a risk assessment cannot be performed by a new CB. It has to be the CB who did your last audit. Now, once the restrictions lift and an on-site audit can take place, the new CB can at that point do the on-site audit, but they cannot do the risk assessment to extend the certificate.
Great. Okay, I have a question now from Erin Stelzel. We just moved to a new building and our certificate from the old facility expires just prior to our new audit. If COVID delays our scheduled audit, what options do we have since we can't extend our certificate from our old facility to cover our new one? And he also added a secondary bit of information. We have a history of A and double A's in the last 3 years.
Yeah, so again, this is a situation where it's unfortunate, but because the certificates, because you need to have an on-site audit at a new site to become certified, the new site will have to wait until the restrictions are lifted in order to have that first on-site audit.
Okay, we do have a follow-up question from Caroline Leclerc following her question regarding internal audits that are usually made by the corporate office. She clarifies, I'm sorry, she asks further, even if they're not certified, a certified internal auditor. So I'm guessing there's no availability of certified internal auditors.
I'm not sure if that's more of a company-specific requirement that their auditors need to be certified. You know, I would say that internal auditors, you know, from my experience, they need to be trained to your systems, but I'm not sure. I'm a little bit confused about the word certified.
I'll jump on this,
sure.
This one for a second. Exactly as you know, you with the technical team and the training team are looking at developing remote training options, because these skills still need to be brought to new people, to new industries. I think that's the same way. You've got, as you said, Jessica, they've got a way of recognizing their internal audit staff, depending on the audit that they are doing. The level of training may be very different. So if you're, you know, if we're going to now internal audit hand washing procedures, we could probably train up any of our staff within a very short period of time to continue to perform that specific internal audit. If we're looking at someone to internal audit the entire HACCP plan or a food fraud plan, that's going to be a little more specialized. So to the question, I think, these are exceptional circumstances. You don't have to look back at your existing rule book and say, what did we have in place previously? You need to deliver new people capable of doing certain internal audits for the short period of time. You need to find a way to embed those. Whether you go to your internal training or you bring on someone like Perry Johnson or you bring on someone like BRCGS training, there are ways of getting that done remotely, and it's now a challenge more of what's the right thing to do to deliver what you need now, as opposed to saying, well, our previous internal auditor certification program used to look like this. We can't do it. There will be a way to progress that.
Okay, great. We have a question now from Ruth Rose. Ruth is wondering if there's any info on issue 9 for BRC.
In terms of when it's going to be launched?
That was the question as read.
Not so far, no.
All right, nice simple answer.
Yeah.
I do have another.
Still going strong with issue 8.
It hasn't finished yet. Do you have another question here from Thomas De Paula? Thomas says, most COVID symptoms are already identified under flu-like symptoms that we require reporting on even before the pandemic started. Do I need to alter my procedure?
I would say that maybe not so much alter your procedure, but make sure that you are maybe increasing the frequency at which you're looking for these symptoms in your employees and that kind of thing. I do think we definitely need to be more diligent, and we need to be asking our employees to report to us more often. Just a reminder and making sure that they understand the importance of it.
Okay, great. Just a general another reminder, because I'm seeing a few more questions come in regarding slides and reviewing the presentation. The slides will be available for download from PJRFSI.com, and the recording will also be available on our YouTube channel, as I've mentioned before. Let's see, let me find a new question. Robert Baru has another question. He asks, can you confirm that the risk assessment is carried out remotely or not?
The risk assessment is carried out, it could be carried out through discussions. It could be carried out over, like a Skype meeting or a Teams meeting or a telephone. It's not on site. So it's if, by remotely we mean collecting information in other ways, then yes, that's correct.
Great. I have a question from Angela Stade for Paul. Angela is wondering, she noticed one of the logos in the presentation was apparently related to cannabis. Do you offer audits for this?
Yeah, Angela, we absolutely do. We are an accredited certification body with ANSI ANAB. It's just going through the final processes now with them, but we're looking to be the first certification body to have 3 different standards for cannabis and hemp. One for the retailers, the manufacturers, and the growers, and the cultivators as well fall into that. So currently right now they're second party unaccredited, but we do have, we've gone through our audits with ANSI and ANAB, and it's looking very good. So more to come on that.
Yeah, and that's a huge industry. We've actually had a few, we had a webinar, I believe it was last week, regarding GMP for cannabis and hemp, and that webinar recording and slides are, like these will be, available from our website and our YouTube channel if you'd like to check that out. All right, we have a question here from Nikolai Wendell. He asks, will auditors be expected to review specific COVID-19 policies and what BRC clauses they would fall under?
They will be required as part of the risk assessment to look at the COVID-19 processes, and this will all be part of crisis management, and they'll be sort of under all of the different sections that we discussed in the presentation. So yes, definitely they'll be looking at how the site is managing the different risks associated with COVID-19.
All right, we have a question from Jennifer Wiper. She asks, if a person inside the facility is requested to do the internal audit, will auditor qualifications be overlooked?
So I think to the same point of the question earlier, and John's great response, you know, we need to be comfortable with understanding that some of our procedures are going to change. So, you know, what we said yesterday worked in terms of who was trained and so on and so forth might not be what, you know, what we're expecting. The important thing is that we need to be able to be creative, and we need to be able to get the internal audits done. You know, and so I think that's the most important thing.
Right. We have a question now from Guillermo Acevedo. He asks, is it okay to deviate from GMPs in this time? We have to stop wearing beard nets due to risk. We are also allowing facial protection.
I think auditors are going to be looking at risk assessments for that kind of thing. So you need to make sure that you've really well documented the reasons for why you're doing this, and the fact that, you know, there is more of a risk, and so on and so forth. So definitely there are going to be some deviations. The important thing is make sure that that everything's very well documented.
All right, we have another question here from Nikolai Wendell. And I believe this harkens back to a question we answered previously. Are only products under the current BRC scope allowed for the 6-month extension? Previously certified products, can those be included in the extension?
So there won't be any changes that can be made to the scope. So whatever the certificate or whatever the site was certified before, that will be the same for the certificate extension, because don't forget, it's the same certificate, it's just an extension versus a new one.
Okay, we have a question from Jerry Baker for Lauren. Jerry says, I've been hearing a lot of concern from our suppliers in relation to their audits being pushed back per the GFSI scheme policies. I'm a little concerned that CBs might have a challenge with this on the other end. Can you give me your thoughts on what you suggest we do now to ensure we don't have an issue in 3 to 6 months?
Great question. Yes, I think it's a concern for a lot of CBs. We are waiting to hear from GFSI and our scheme owners to see if they also come up with some creative solutions on trying to cram so many audits in the time frame after these travel restrictions or policies are lifted. One thing you can do is contact us and schedule out your audit within the 6 months. So if we reschedule you, we can get a date down for you, and then as that date approaches, we can reevaluate if the travel restrictions are still in place or the COVID-19 is still a problem.
Great answer.
And they would be put in the priority to be scheduled.
Great. We have a question now from Rachel Wormart. She asks, if our audit is more than 6 months away with the hope that audits are back to normal and auditors will be allowed on site at that time, will they be looking back at a site's COVID-19 response plan retroactively?
That's a great question, and actually one that nobody has asked us yet.
Perfect.
So, yeah, what I would say about that is they're probably not going to be looking as deep into it. However, one thing that I think we have all learned is that we need to include pandemics in our emergency response plans and crisis management plans. So I think, what I would say is make sure to have that updated, because there might be some additional attention paid to that.
Okay, great. Just a reminder, please go ahead and type those questions in. We do absolutely want to address everything. We're getting some great questions in here. Now, John and Jessica, do you have anything that you've maybe thought of while you're answering these questions that you maybe you didn't touch on during the presentation?
I think there's been some great questions coming through. I mean, that last one about, when will that be something in the past? Probably not. I think there's going to be a lot of challenges going forward as well. I mean, we've already had some in the West Coast who have started to say we're trying to plan what our audit's going to look like, and I think the conversations they're going to have with the certification bodies like Barry Johnson on what is an audit going to look like if we do one in June or July, and things like that are going to make for some challenges, but things that I think both certification bodies and the sites are going to be able to manage.
Absolutely. We're getting a couple of questions, so I'm going to try and lump them together into one general question. This includes questions from Janine and Farnak. They're both asking, I don't know if you could rehash, please, Jessica and John, the policy on whether or not you're able to get an extension.
Sure. So basically, whether or not they're able to get an extension. So all sites should be able to get an extension, assuming that the certification body, when they collect all of the information related to the risk assessment, determines that it's acceptable for the site to get that extension. So the cases where a site would not be able to get an extension would be if the site is a C or a D grade. And because in that case, they're considered high-risk sites. In any other situation, there should be no reason why it can't be assessed.
Okay, great.
And I think that includes specifically the question about the plant is not functioning or functioning on a different. If the certificate can be extended based on the risk assessment provided by the certification body. To up to that 6 months. But remember, look at it as a maximum of 6 months. The question that was asked of Lauren about how are we going to, yes, there is going to be a bottleneck of getting audits done as the market starts to open back up. So if you're in a region where, you get a 6 month extension and 3 months in, you're in a position where you can bring an auditor on site. Do that. Don't wait till the end of the 6 months, because there's no way the certification bodies are going to be able to deliver the audits required based on that.
Right. Janine has asked a further extension of her question. Do we have to apply for the extension, or will it be automatic?
So it's not automatic. You do need to contact your certification body and just let them know that you need to have that risk assessment process conducted.
All right, we've got one more, and this one is for Paul. This is from Robert. If we're looking to build out our supplier program, do you have the technical resources to support the creation, and can we customize such a program?
Yeah, Robert, thank you for the question. We absolutely do. With Lauren and her team, they're a team of technical experts on the file who would work with you to develop this. I mean, at this point right now, and I've said it for years, your suppliers can potentially be the greatest risk to any organization. So managing that risk and protecting your brand is critical today. We can do any type of supplier audits for you based on our first, second, or third party programs like we have discussed earlier in the presentation. We can customize those if you're looking at going even above and beyond, or if you want some specific areas like social accountability or swabbing or environmental monitoring, whatever that need may be, we can absolutely work with you to put together a program to help you out.
Okay, great. If there's any other questions, we have one more from Nikolai Wendell. How soon should you contact your certification body for an extension if the scheduled audit is for July or August?
I would start looking at, so as soon as your audit window starts, I would start looking at trying to get an extension. Knowing that our auditors and certification bodies are going to be busy undergoing these activities, I think it's really important just to make sure that you've got something in the books and scheduled so that you can do that.
Okay, we have a question now from Farnak Ali. We are AA grade. Can certification bodies mandate to do an on-site audit because we are operational?
No, because you're going to have your own policies and procedures, and if your policy right now is to not allow visitors on site, then that's part of the reason why you would request an extension versus having an on-site audit.
Okay. If there's any other questions, please go ahead and drop them right in that question box. Otherwise, I'm going to ask our presenters if they have any other closing statements or words they'd like to share for our audience.
I'm just again going to thank everybody for participating and for doing the great work that they're doing. I'll leave it at that.
Agreed. Thank you for your time, everyone.
Yeah, thanks everyone, and thanks for all the great questions as well. And feel free to to contact us if you have other questions after this, and we'll be sure to answer them and also add them to our FAQs on our website.
Great, thank you guys so much. Again, the slides and the recording of this presentation will be available from PJRFSI.com probably within the next 24 to 48 hours after we process and upload everything. Other than that, I want to thank, as our presenter said, I want to thank everyone for their time and attention. This was a great session. We had some great attendance, great questions at the end, and I'm so glad that everyone was able to make it. We hope to see you in one of our other upcoming webinars. You can find those again at the link up on the screen right now on PJRFSI.com. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and have everyone sign off. I hope everyone stays happy. I'm sorry?
I'm so sorry. I just noticed one typo. The webinar at the bottom there for April 22nd is actually May 6th. When that's on our website, that's correct. That was my error. So apologies. It's May 6th.
Understandable. So with that, now that that's been clarified, thank you, Paul. I'm going to go ahead and just wish everyone happiness and health in this trying time. And thank you again so much for attending. We'll see you in the next webinar.